name is Steven Hernandez. I'm with CGS 480 at CSUN, and I would like to present to you the benefits of one-on-one tutoring. So I partnered up with the Reading Partner Programs. They're a children's literacy nonprofit organization with programs in over 40 school districts across the nation. Sessions typically last from half an hour to an hour, and the program always welcomes volunteers to have an opportunity to give back to your community. So I got lucky enough to pick 3 hours a week. I picked a single day, and I managed to cram in 3 hours of volunteer time, so I was able to teach typically around 3 to 4 students for one day out of the week. And when I was assigned there, I needed to make that place a bit better before I left it. I needed to make my mark there, and I wanted to make sure that my students were getting the most out of my time there. And I needed to figure out what the biggest issue there was. So at first, I believe the lesson plan themselves were the issue. At times, they read more like a dull script than an actual lesson plan, and I began to wonder some of the books connected to the lesson plan were a bit stale. So I'm no expert in making lesson plans. I'm not an ex-teacher. I'm not anything like that. I'm just a regular old student volunteer. So I needed to make sure, right? So I made a short survey and I sent it to my program coordinator, and I just needed a whole lot more input before I went down this route. And as you can see here, if you read to the bottom here, the lesson plans are diverse and plentiful for my students. The coordinator put highly agree. So I may be in the wrong here. And if you go down to number 3, some of the lesson plans could use a rework, either because they are objectively difficult for the students or they lack a particular value you think is necessary to include. Disagree. So after reevaluating this whole data set and I started talking around with more volunteers at the site, I began to think that I was wrong, and truth be told, I was. The real issue was that I saw a lack of confidence in all of my students' answers, and here are the top 3 right here. They constantly looked at me for reassurance. When your student is reading and say they get to a word that is a bit too difficult for them to say it out loud, pronounce, they sort of look at you with this blank stare, and they start to wonder, do I keep going? Do you want me to keep going? Do you want me to start over? What do I do? And they look at you for that reassurance. The second one, constantly second guess themselves. It sort of comes with the reassurance part. They could sometimes get the answer right. They're reading the most complicated story, and you're so amazed by how quickly they're picking it up, and they get to a word that they may be stuck on, but they fly through it, and you're very proud of them. But suddenly they go back and they say to themselves, no, 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 wait, hang on, this was wrong. I read that wrong, clearly. And then they're just stuck on it. And the third part, preventing themselves from critically thinking. It was very difficult to have my students not throw out random answers. So when I asked them a question, they would typically throw out a random response, a random guess, and then look at my, I guess, reaction to say, okay, that was wrong, or yeah, that was right. And I didn't want that. I wanted them to sort of marinate in the question that I gave them and let them think for themselves. They need to critically think. Of course, you always this is important not just in school but in life in general. You always want your students, your youth to critically think for themselves. So here's what I did. The SWOT analysis. But some of you may have a bit of a chuckle because this is typically used for business management. This is obviously not a business. I'm just a volunteer at a volunteer site for the Reading Partners program. But I thought this fit best because it is so detailed I couldn't help but use it. So in the strengths section, they were eager to learn. You always want a student that is eager to learn. This was important to take in. They enjoyed the books offered to them. The whole point of Reading Partners is to read to them stories and whatnot, and you need to teach them the whole lesson plan contributed to that story. They seemed grateful to be there. That is very rare nowadays. It is very difficult to have a student actually sit in the chair, actually make them pay attention to the lesson plan that's going on, and to have a student that is grateful to be there. That is always wonderful in my mind. You always want that as a teacher as well, I'm sure. And the weaknesses part, I already highlighted this part because we already went over it. They lack confidence in their responses, and most importantly, under it as well. They would at times give up when they get the answer wrong over and over. They would hit a brick wall, and they don't really try to tumble it down. As you get wiser and older, you understand that the brick wall will eventually fall down, but these are kids and they don't really understand that yet. And I needed to really pressure them into continuously giving answers through critical thinking. And through my opportunities, I saw the one-on-one tutoring benefits. I wasn't teaching a classroom. I wasn't teaching 30 kids at once, 40 kids at once, 50 kids at once. That is the new norm for teachers nowadays. I am teaching a student one on one. I can build a connection, and it should be easier for that student to give me their answers through critical thinking. And you're not strictly going word by word on the lesson plan. No one is breathing over your shoulder as you volunteer there. No one is breathing over your shoulder to check if you're reading the lesson plan word for word, because there's sort of a whole script that you're allowed to read, but you're not necessarily supposed to follow it. You can be your own person, and you can still teach these very simplistic things to the students. You don't need to be some sort of monotonous robot thinking out loud like this. And then in the threat section, I put time pressure to fit everything into a tutoring session. Depending on what you do, your sessions can last from the max 30 to 45 minutes. Sounds great for a very simplistic lesson, but time flies, and the last thing you want to do is miss out on the most critical things you wanted to teach that student. So, with this out of the way, with the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats in mind, here's what I did for my mission timeline. I needed to boost the connection between me and the student. How did I do that? I needed to start the sessions a bit earlier. And then moving on from there, I needed to let them be a bit more free. Allow them to have their own whiteboard. I always made sure, after a certain amount of time of being there, I allowed them to have their own whiteboard. And since they were there a bit earlier, because I picked them up from their class a bit earlier, they were allowed to just draw, write, whatever they want on the whiteboard. I don't care. I needed to get them engaged. I just wanted them to enjoy being there. They are grateful to be there, and I had to take advantage of that. So I needed to show my appreciation. Give them the whiteboard, give them a bunch of markers, whatever the case. Let them be a child. Ask them funny questions, make them laugh if you can. Whatever you can do, let them be a child at that lesson plan before the whole classroom session takes in place. And after that, you needed to increase the questions asked, but don't overdo it. So to promote independent thinking, right, as I put there, and to promote more independence in general, really, to not allow these students to constantly second guess themselves, sort of look up at you and think, I'm not sure about this. Can you please reassure me? You don't constantly want that from your students. You want them to promote their self-confidence. You want them to promote their critical thinking, as I've already said. This happened in early April. Let's move on to the orange part. I needed to emphasize the importance of failure. Reassure them it is okay to be wrong. Don't reassure them on the answers. Don't just sit there and tell them the answers to them. Reassure them, hey, if you don't think that's the right answer, that's all right. Say it out loud. Say it proud. I don't care if it's dead wrong. Listen, you need to tell me that you're here, that you're paying attention, and it is okay for you to fail. That brick wall will eventually fall over, and it is okay, because failure is a part of life. It is important for you to fail because that's how we learn. And a lot of these students, they're very scared of failure, and you clearly do not want that. You want to promote their self-confidence by making them face failure head on, even if it means a little bit of embarrassing answers here and there. That's all right. It's one-on-one tutoring. It's not in front of a classroom. And the grade right here, I needed to be a bit open in the way you tutor them. Oh, I tutor them, excuse me. You're not bound by the lesson plan. So as I said earlier, you can be your own person. If you, for whatever reason, let's just say you feel that the part of the lesson plan was a bit too perhaps stale or boring. I really don't know. You can talk to your coordinator about this. If you feel that you are able to promote yourself in a way that emphasizes not just the lesson plan, but emphasize fun, confidence, and overall independence within that student, talk to the coordinator. Let him or her know, like, listen, I'm going to go a bit off script here, and I want to incorporate a book I just saw. I think it fits perfectly. It has all the correct vocab, verbs, and whatnot that is already in the lesson plan. So I'm going to go get this book really quickly. I'm going to let them read this to me, and I'm going to incorporate the lesson plan there. You're not bound by the lesson plan. It is not chains. You are free to do what you want. Just let your coordinator know. And in the end, here at the final tutor sessions in the mid of May, when you see results, always jump on them. Never miss an opportunity to praise them. As the tutor sessions come to an end, always make sure to jump on the results. If they did the most simplistic thing and they answered it correctly, Let them know, please. That is the most important part out of all this. If you're going to build them the self confidence that they need, you need to jump at the results. Always let them know, yeah, that was great, good job. Wow, you actually got that. That was incredible. Please keep going. Always promote that. And the results from that, it was an increase of attention span. Always want that, especially in kids, right? Increase their critical thinking. When I ask them questions, they stop for a moment, maybe for a minute, quick minute or two, and they come out with the right answer. I love that. Fluency rate increase as they relied more and more on themselves, and they were not second guessing themselves so much. Their fluency rate began to noticeably increase, and I love that as well. They began to tackle problems head on. So before I could even jump in and let that student know, oh hey, I think you got that one wrong, they already jump in on it for themselves because of that self confidence I was able to build up for them, and for the confidence that they built up themselves as well. They fixed the error before you even jump in. And lastly, they felt a whole lot more comfortable saying answers even when they were wrong. It was great to see the amount of times I was able to get my students to just sit there for a minute, think of the answer. And even though they probably thought they were wrong, they looked at me and they said the answer. Despite them being wrong, they still felt comfortable. And I love to see that. Because one of the most embarrassing things at their age, the last thing you want to do is raise your hand and blurt out the wrong answer in front of 30, 40, 50 kids at a young age like that. Some students don't even want to do that at high school or college even. So it felt great to see that. Always make sure to reap the benefits of one-on-one tutoring. If you're going to build that self-confidence, it's just you and the problem that the student has. It is not you and the classroom full of problems that require different levels of teaching. Always take advantage and reap the benefits of the one-on-one tutoring you have gotten yourself in. And that'll be all. Thank you so much for watching.